Na 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 Batman. Na 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 Batman. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to today's episode of the Technicolor Mike B Show. We are live here on YouTube. And over the past year or two, I've done a few superhero faces that were sort of, what would I look like if I became a superhero? Well, today I sort of changed it up and said, what would I look like if I was a supervillain? Yes. And then I was thinking, supervillains don't really hide their identity. They don't wear masks. They're just evil people. You have Lex Luthor, and he's not afraid to let people know he is Lex Luthor. He doesn't wear a mask. He doesn't need one. So yeah. So that is what we did for today. We did the super villain. Assuming I didn't want people to know who I was, I still had a life outside of crime. So I've been watching Marvel's 616 on Disney Plus, and I've been enjoying their episodes, even though I have never been a reader of comic books. Now, the first thing I asked was, what's up with the 616 for Marvel's 616? I'm like, that's not like, I thought it should be like Marvel 411 because it's all the information you need to know about Marvel or something like that. But no, apparently 616 is a reference to Earth 616, which is sort of the center of the Marvel universe, the prime Earth, the location of all their superhero stories that are Earth-based. It is their universe, their dimension. And if you haven't watched Marvel 616 and you don't have Disney Prime, let me just sort of give you an outline of what it is all about. So the first episode of Marvel 616 was about the Japanese version of Spider-Man. It seemed the Japanese have been doing superheroes, and someone said, why don't we tap into their market? And they sold Marvel on the idea of, let's do a superhero for the Japanese and have it based on Spider-Man. And I guess Marvel agreed to it as long as it was stayed in Japan, that it didn't interfere with any of their U.S. operations. So it was really an independent character, an independent design, and other than the fact that the Spider-Man had some poses and some costuming and things that sort of harken back to the American version of Spider-Man, it was a totally unique and separate character that had a car, had vehicles, it had toys and powers and things like that the American Spider-Man didn't have. So it was a story about the evolution of the Japanese Spider-Man and the different things that went with the fact that it's a totally different character than we would recognize as Spider-Man in the U.S. Other episodes have focused on the artists who create all of the superheroes and characters for Marvel, the women behind it and involved in creating the comic books, creating a diversity of characters so that people can find a superhero that looks like them, that acts like them, talks like them, that all their superheroes aren't just white men in fancy tights, that there would be women and minorities and Asians and Indians and every race would be covered by their superheroes, so everyone could find a superhero that they could identify with. They had an episode on cosplaying in the superhero world and going to the New York Comic Con. They had one on some of the toys that have been created for Marvel and their superheroes. And the last episode I watched, which I think was the last one that they made, was on a program that Marvel had where they released some plays that schools could perform, and that they looked at a school that had sort of a lot of at-risk and other populations that benefited from having a theater program when they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. So I found it was a fun series and gave me a lot of insight into things I didn't know about Marvel and the superheroes, the characters, and what they've been up to for the last 50 years of creating comic books. And that got me into thinking about what is really the history of the American comic book and superheroes. So yeah, I looked online, and in my mind, there are two groups of superheroes that I think of when I talk about superheroes based on comic books. And those are, of course, the Marvel Universe superheroes, your characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the Avengers, and other characters. I could go on and on naming them. And then there are a group from DC Comics and their universe, which is Spider-Man, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash, Aquaman, and characters like that. So those are the two biggest groups that I think of when it comes to comic books and superheroes. And so let's look back at the history. The American comic book is a thin periodical with pictures that originated in the United States, and it averages 32 pages containing comics. Yeah, I don't know how they came up with 32 pages, why that's the magic number, but that's what my sources say is the average for a comic book. The art form began in 1933 and gained popularity after the 1938 publication of Action Comics, which included the debut of the superhero Superman. Action Comics was published by National Allied Publication, which is currently known as DC Comics. Yes, Superman is part of the DC comic universe. So yeah, so what do you know about this Superman guy? He's like one of the most popular superheroes in the United States. But do you know his legacy? Well, he was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and they launched Action Comics #1, April 1938. Yes, April 1938, they launched Superman in the comics. But what you may not know is that Superman's creators first envisioned him as a villain. Yes, he was not always the good guy. The original Superman came out in a story book that Jerry Siegel had self-published in 1933 called The Reign of Superman. It featured a character named Bill Dunn, who was the subject of an experiment by a mad scientist. As a result of that experiment, he gained the ability to read people's minds and then also influence their thoughts. And he didn't initially begin evil, but his abilities sort of, he realized he could accrue wealth and influence on others if he used those powers for evil. So the original Superman in that 1933 version was an evil character. And they tried to sell the concept to different organizations for a more regular comic strip or comic book, and it wasn't till they reimagined him, instead of using his powers for bad and evil, as a hero for the good. And you know, Superman just beat out Batman. The Batman comic book and character was created by artist Bob Kane and writer Bill Finger, who debuted the character in the 27th issue of the comic book Detective Comics on March 30th, 1939. So a year after the debut of Superman, his partner of Batman was introduced in comic books. And many attribute the Silver Age of comics starting when DC Comics created the Justice League of America in 1960. And it didn't take Marvel that long to say, hey, you know, they're getting some good sales on comic books. Let's try to come up with our own. So the Marvel era of superheroes began in 1961, and it launched the Fantastic Four and other superheroes created by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, and others with the Marvel organizations. So yeah, so those are sort of the origins of all of the superheroes that we know and love today, and the villains that they have fought. DC and Marvel both have a huge universe of comic books and characters and storylines and backstories. So yeah, I while I was doing the research, I found information that an organization named OnePoll surveyed Americans to find out who is our favorite superhero, and the results, which I believe came out last year, said Superman is number 1 and Spider-Man is number 2. Other heroes that made the list: Batman number 3, Captain America 4, Iron Man 5, Wonder Woman 6. So yeah, so we have a back and forth between the DC comic books characters and the Marvel in our top 10 ranking of favorite superheroes, and I do think that list is partially based on not just the comic book, but these the TV shows, the cartoons, the movies, and other things that feature those superheroes. Because I'm assuming there's a lot of people like me that love superheroes but never got into reading comic books. I watched all the Super Friend episodes on TV, the Spider-Man comics, cartoons, the original Batman and Robin TV series, the original Wonder Woman TV series. So yeah, I've grown up watching the products of Marvel and DC Universe. And another thing I thought was interesting, they asked people, who are your favorite villains? Well, I guess we like the Batman universe for our villains because the Joker and Catwoman are our top 2. Venom, Thanos, and Lex Luthor round up the top 5. And they also asked, what superpowers do you want most? Personally, I want the ability to fly. I think that would be the coolest thing in the world, but it seems most Americans want invisibility. That is 37% of the respondents said that that would be their one superpower. Healing, time travel, strength, and intelligence round out the top 5 superpowers. So yeah, flying didn't even make the list. I guess if you could travel through time, it wouldn't matter that it took you a long time to get from place to place. Or maybe the super strength includes some super speed. So yeah, so here is our super villain Balloon. He's got the blue mask, sort of the ninja style mask, and he's got his orange, gold, and blue color scheme for the rest of his outfit. I don't know why he has to protect his identity, because we already said villains just show up as they are. They don't need to hide who they really are. So until next time, same bat time, same bat channel. Oh, that's not what we're supposed to say. We're supposed to say, see you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile. Thanks for watching today's episode of the Technicolor Mike B Show.